Hello, everybody. My name is Fiona Simon. I'm here to discuss my book, Gambling on Granola. The Boulder Bookstore has been kind enough to ask me a few questions about my book. The first is, what inspired me to write my book? Truth is, really my customers inspired me to write my book. Many of them told me that my story would inspire up-and-coming entrepreneurs, and they encouraged me to write a book after I sold my granola company. And so I took their heed and I wrote my book. I started a granola business because I suddenly found myself to be a single mom and I needed to go back to work full time. And so I got a wonderful job at the Boulder Chamber of Commerce. I was the communications director. But what I did not love about my job was the lack of flexibility as a single mom. I wanted to pick up Natalie right after school, go on field trips, pop into her classes, and none of that was really possible working a full-time job. So I pounded the pavement for about a year and a half, and one day the inspiration came to me to start a granola company. I had been baking granola since I was 14 years old, never had intended to go into business with it, but that day I decided I would go into business with my granola company. And the most unexpected challenge was how hard I would have to work. I went from working 40 hours a week for the chamber to 80 hours a week for myself. And some weeks I put in many more than 80 hours. I believe my passion for healthy food started with my mom. She started baking granola when I was 5, and she was a very, very creative cook in the kitchen. My dad's mother was a dietitian, and her sister was a gourmet chef. And so I came from this line of women who were very creative in the kitchen and always prepared healthy food, and I believe that passion was simply handed down to me. I do have a piece of advice for anyone who wants to go into business, namely to go for your dreams, because no one wants to be on a deathbed wondering what if. And so there's actually a paragraph in my book that addresses that question. I learned valuable lessons from my business. Trust needs to be earned. Goodwill is only as good as its outcome. Dollar signs can blur one's vision. Courage and resilience are options we choose. Others do not have the right to dissuade us from pursuing our dreams. We make mistakes because we have something to learn. Adversity makes us stronger. And the bookstore asked me what I've been reading. Well, during the pandemic, like everybody else, I felt isolated, kind of down in the dumps. And so I was looking for something to raise my spirits. And I found this on my shelf, The Art of Happiness by the Dalai Lama. I'm really enjoying this book. It's uplifting, it's funny, and it gives me a lot of hope for humanity. The other book I'm reading is called The Enneagram Made Easy. This is because I'm living in Santa Fe now, and I'm working with a couple of psychotherapists, and they are very much into the Enneagram. And so I thought I would read this book more or less to just figure out what my number is. And then just to keep up my Spanish, I'm reading a book of short stories called Album. So the Boulder Bookstore asked me if there's anything particular about my book I want listeners to know about. And there's a very cute story in the book about taking a life writing workshop. And as it turns out, that life writing workshop was right upstairs at the Boulder Bookstore. So now I'm going to read to you a couple of passages about my book. The first has to do with my logo, which some of you might remember. It was a motif of lotus flowers, and I came up with the tagline, "I'm perfectly baked." And my hope was that people would wonder why I came up with that tagline and perhaps become a little bit intrigued with why my granola is perfectly baked. And when I came up with the tagline, my granola was not in these boxes. It was in white window bags with a simple front label and back label. My hope was that people who saw the tagline would wonder, how exactly is it perfectly baked? Or what does she mean by perfectly baked? And would look at the back label to find out. Soon I'd created t-shirts. The front displayed the company logo and read, "I'm not just half-baked." On the back were the words, "I'm perfectly baked." Of course, being baked had other connotations, especially in Boulder. Although retail marijuana was not yet legal in Colorado, the town held true to its reputation as a liberal pot-smoking community, home to many hippies. For marketing and to build good relations, I offered the shirts to employees of the stores that sold Fiona's granola. They were a big hit. I'd barely opened a box before the employees were swarming to get one. The double entendre was rarely lost. The only person who ever asked about it was my mother. "By the way," she said on the phone one day, "why is it when people read the back of my Fiona's t-shirt, they start laughing?" I dutifully explained the other meaning. "Ah," she replied, "that's quite clever. Well, I shall continue to wear it in pride." Natalie, slightly particular about her wardrobe, requested a shirt without the tagline. "No words, Mom," she told me. "I just want flowers on my shirt." That was fortunate. She was only 5, and I certainly didn't want to give the impression that my daughter walked around baked, especially since I was a single mom running a business in Boulder. So the next passage has to do with getting into a restaurant chain called the Egg and I. The Egg and I at the time was based in Fort Collins, and the menu director found my granola at the Whole Foods in Fort Collins, and he had been looking for a local granola, and so he bought a bag and he really liked it, and he called me. We talked about creating a special variety just for the Egg and I, which I did, and that allowed me to get into distribution with Cisco. Later that week, I trained my employees to make the new variety. They baked the granola the night before delivery, dedicating the entire evening to that one variety. After loading my Subaru Outback with 32 cases, off I drove to the Cisco warehouse in Denver. Some employees looked at me suspiciously as I backed up on the little delivery ramp. I only chatted with them if they initiated conversation. I knew they were on the clock, and I thought it wise not to interfere with their schedules. Inside, my eyes opened wide. I had never seen such a large warehouse, nor forklifts that looked like golf carts zipping through the aisles, their drivers honking as they rounded the corners. The warehouse employees looked at me also. When they spoke, they were brusque. "So, what you got in those boxes?" Upon learning it was granola, they chuckled. "Granola, huh? I suppose it's healthy. No, not for me." What filled the warehouse were pallets piled high with potato chips, corn chips, and every other imaginable snack, including things I had no idea people still ate, like Twinkies and ding-dongs. My organic granola was surely one of the healthiest foods at that warehouse. It was a man's world, a place of heavy lifting, cold temperatures, and gruff attitudes. Occasionally, one of the guys offered to fetch a pallet or helped unload the cases, and we chatted while we worked. They'd make comments such as, "Hello, little lady. I see you brought us more of that hippie granola today." And because they knew the cereal was made in Boulder, "Are you sure you're not sneaking in a special ingredient?" The receiver I chatted with the most called me Maiden of the Earth. He'd see the dock door open and exclaim, "Ah, it's our maiden of the earth come to deliver more of that hippie granola." The head receiver wasn't quite as pleasant. I couldn't check in with him until I'd loaded the granola onto 2 pallets and a receiver had counted them. I usually found him at his desk shuffling through paperwork. When he heard my friendly, "Hello there," he'd slowly look up and say in his gruff manner, "What's up, hippie chick?" His voice was deep and smoky and reminded me of John Wayne. A few of the warehouse workers had noticed my custom license plate, granola. "Well, at least your license plate makes sense to me now," they'd say. On warm days, by the time I got to the warehouse, my Subaru smelled like a brewery. At first, I couldn't figure out why. Then I realized it was the barley. When heated, barley gives off that distinct aroma that permeates beer establishments. On Cisco delivery days, my car smelled like a microbrewery on wheels. Some days, the scent was so strong I had to roll down the windows. So I hope that gives you a flavor of my book. May it inspire you, may it delight you, and may it help you go for your dreams. Thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with me today.